speakerphone?
Since he'd be here in 5 minutes. That was a few
I
minutes
don't know,
ago.
Woody gets to be kind of messy this time of day.
Yeah, no kidding.
She'll let you know when she gets you.
No, you shouldn't tell them.
You know, Don,
Okay.
Don.
Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mayor, any other presentations, stuff like this, and this should really come first.
Do that again.
I said, any presentations that you have really should, this stuff should come first, like, capacity information. And the nitrogen, well, even that's not so.
Yeah,
big deal, but
that's just this.
just the capacity from my standpoint is what's really important here. Capacity information, and then Sam's gonna talk to you, Fran's gonna talk to you about the do's and don'ts.
He's gonna talk now, right now.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
For the public portion?
I'll do the public portion. Okay, I'm gonna change the agenda around just a little bit, but we can still have the public portion first. Anybody wishing to address the commission, please come to the podium. Anyone wishing to address the public, excuse me, any public person wishing to address the commission, please come to the podium. Anyone wishing to address the commission, please come to the podium. Seeing no public people present, like to move to the section 6 F, and our corporation counsel Theodosia would like to make a small presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Fran Teodosio. Like your chairman said, I'm your corporation counsel. I don't show up here much, but I'm here this evening to help some of you or guide the entire board with regard to options you have concerning the use of the sewer system within the city and how you can charge and what you can do. I think some of you are familiar with the process because you've been on the board for a while. Annually, you set rate.
Could you step up to the mic there?
Sure, this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Annually, you set a rate for the sewer charges that you levy against users. I've been questioned as to whether or not there are other ways to do it, and you do have to have a public hearing anytime you change your rate, but you also have the option to differentiate how you charge various users. And I think that I had passed out earlier, because I brought it to your last meeting, copy of 7-255, which is the general statute that lays out the parameters of what you can do and you can't do. And I'm just going to read off the categories of, if you will, use or discharge, I guess, is the other characteristic that you can utilize at your discretion to attach various costs to various users of a sewer use facility or infrastructure. And the first one is the volume of water discharged into the system. That would be effectuated by a meter. The second is the type and size of the building connected with the sewage system. You can differentiate along those lines if you choose. The number of plumbing fixtures connected with the sewage system. The number of persons customarily using the property served by the sewage system. And in the case of commercial or industrial property, the average number of employees and guests using the property, and the quality and character of the material discharged into the sewage system. So those are 5 separate categories, or I should say 6 separate categories that you could consider as you formulate your use charges. obviously it needs backup and it needs rationality, but that you can get from your engineers. To the extent that you decide to make some type of differentiation, if you choose, with regard to your fees, as opposed to just having flat fees. There are generally flat fees and metered fees, but these 6 characteristics allow you to really hone and change the use fees based on whatever data you think is appropriate for the type of use being dumped into the system. The way you make these changes are the same way that you set your rate every year. You have the public hearing, you let the public know what you're going to be doing, and you go forward. My mic all of a sudden stopped, but I can answer any questions that you have. I can help you formulate notices to the public should you decide to do that. And I encourage you, if you decide to go this way, to have the data behind you before you make any such changes.
So let me jump in here and kind of give everybody a little background as to how we got to this point. I think we can all agree that these are very different times. They're changing times. We're dealing with things like the 830G statute that we never had to deal with before. The high density projects like apartment buildings put a real strain on the system from a capacity standpoint. We've never had to deal with this before because it was never a fad or was never a reality, but it's really overtaking Connecticut and the whole country. And so when you take a couple acres of land, I'll give you an example. I've given this to you, some of you individually. Planning and zoning over the last couple of years has approved 4 or 5 projects up on Bridgeport Avenue on 1 and 2 and 3 acre parcels where there was no influx into the sewer system, and there was maybe 1 residential unit into the system. So now when you take an apartment building and you put 55 units or 40 units or 90 units, it greatly impacts the number of gallons that go into the sewer system every day. And we are not in a situation where we have unlimited capacity. And I have asked the administrator to talk to our new engineer and get the board up to speed in terms of capacity. So from a historical standpoint, a lot of you people are new to the board, but you don't know what has transpired over the last 20 and 30 years and how we've laid out capacity allocations for different areas of the city, i.e. the downtown area, Bridgeport Avenue. When we allocated X amount of gallons of capacity for the downtown area, we anticipated 20 and 25 years ago that there was going to be new development and high density development. So that's what the board did. That's what the master plan shows. Up on Bridgeport Avenue, we did a little bit different because it was more of a commercial area. Didn't anticipate that there would be so many apartment projects. And quite honestly, I never anticipated that planning and zoning would approve all these apartment projects up on Bridgeport Avenue, but they have. And it's kind of put this board in a little bit of a predicament. And so some of you know that, especially up on Bridgeport Avenue, there are some breaches of inflow into the system that eat up our capacity when we have high rain events. That has to be dealt with. And, again, the south end of the city is in a different situation because there's an interlocal agreement with the town of Stratford where all the effluent goes to. And when you start putting apartment complexes and high density complexes into that area and send it to Stratford, you're going to eat up that capacity, and the people who are not on the system, who live in residential areas, who we've accommodated for, are going to get left behind. So these are all considerations that this board has to take into context with, because at some point in time, it's going to have an impact on people in the public. And when you create a situation where you create an economic boom for someone on a small piece of property with a high density project, how is that a level playing field for the average person that lives in 1 acre residential lot and has been there all their lives and are ready to go onto the sewer system, but they can't because there's no more capacity. And I'm not saying that that we're all out of capacity, because we're not. But at the rate at which we're consuming the capacity is a red flag for me. And the board really has to wrestle with this and evaluate it before they make these decisions. And I think we also have to have a communication with the Planning and Zoning Commission about what they're doing or not doing. And so, there's also, some consideration that has to be given to the differing rates that people pay, on an annual basis for use of the sewer system. I.e. Some of you know that all the stuff that goes to Stratford charges us like $565
$65.
Per unit, as opposed to what everyone else is paying in the city. What is it?
$228.
28. So that's a significant difference, and right now, everything is included in our tax bill, so everyone else is paying the freight for that. So the board has to give some consideration, particularly with these new high-density projects that may go into Stratford. So, I need, so we need to put these things on the table. We need to have the discussion with our engineers, and applicants need to understand just what's at stake here for us. And, and away we go. So I'll stop there, because I just wanted to just kind of highlight the big picture of the WPCA capacity issue. Fran, is there anything else you want to add with respect to that?
No, just that, any differentiation you make has to be backed up by, your statistics or your math or your rationale. The categories I read to you say that you can even consider what is being discharged into your system and make differentiation of charges based on that. So,
Do we use our consultants, our consulting engineer to determine the rates, or do we determine the rates?
well, you determine the rates, but your consultant, I mean, if you say to your consultant, we're gonna base a rate on, the number of toilets that's in a commercial building. Your consultant can probably give you the parameters and size of the building that you could estimate would be the basis for a charge. And you say if your building is so many square feet, or it has so many toilets, this is what the charge is gonna be, or the charge is gonna be by toilet. I mean,
But who says that by toilet? We do, or because I have no idea.
well, if it's by toilet, then it's when the person comes in, but you're gonna have to base a rate on that. And you may want your consultant to tell you what the average number of
Okay.
toilets in a building is or something.
Thank you.
I think ultimately, Don, the answer to your question is it's the board's discretion. The board makes the decision. You have a consulting engineer to help you ascertain certain facts and information that that allow you to make an informed decision.
Okay. Now, once we make that decision, maybe this isn't the place to talk about it, but we need more time, but when we make that decision, does it have to be approved by the Board of Aldermen, or is that something that can just be done by the commission?
Now, you are separate and independent.
Beautiful, thank you. I'm more powerful than I know.
So you could have multiple charges,
You could have different charges, and you could have
based on this
menu of
template.
charges.
That's 6
I
different.
mean, when WPCA first started, when they were separated based on the federal law from the city budget, they were essentially told, look, you can do a use charge, or you can do a flat fee. They've broadened what you can do with regard to
Okay.
categorization.
Awesome.
There's also another big decision for this board to make, I believe, and Fran, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but particularly in the south end of town where we have that interlocal with Stratford, at some point in time, that capacity is gonna go away, it's gonna be used up. Now, whether we can get more capacity from them, still remains to be seen, and I think the board's gonna have to decide where this capacity, this extra capacity is gonna go. Is it gonna come back to the plant? Is it gonna go to Stratford?
That you need your engineers for.
Yeah,
Right, but I'm just saying that the board has the ability to make that decision
Yeah,
as to where it goes.
Eugene or Mike, do you have any questions for the attorney?
No, I think it's a good conversation. It builds on the past conversations we've had in the meetings. I think like let's chat with the engineer, get a few scenarios together that we can classify things with. Obviously we know that Stratford's is an area of concern for us to take a look at.
Yeah.
And we're running a deficit in that area, but definitely want to have a conversation with the engineer to figure out how do we handle that best.
Yep, thank you.
I have a question on my end. Are there any provisions, I don't know exactly what manual or book or the sewer systems this one page was from. Are there any provisions for having an engineer do, I'll call them reservations, right? Like, so for the south end of town, for example, where there's X amount of residences that are currently on a septic tank that over the next X amount of years would eventually switch to public sewer system. Being that I'm going to make up fake numbers here. Let's say we have 1 million gallons of flow available on the south side, and we're planning to allocate 800,000 of that based off of the properties right now that are on septic that may eventually switch over. Is there any way we could incorporate what that future looks like and reserve it and not allocate a new property to that 800,000? Again, I'm making
I don't
big
know,
numbers here, but
I don't know if this is part of it, but we are having a new study done for that, but I don't know if that's
Okay.
part of it. We can certainly Mike and I will talk about, Bill and I will talk about that.
So Eugene, to your question, in the past, we have made provisions, particularly in the Pine Rock area. We know how many homes in the Pine Rock area are not tied into the sewer system. They're on septics, but yet the pipe runs in front of their house. And that at some point in time, we knew that they were gonna have to tie into it because just of the nature of the ground in Pine Rock. We've also done that in the Huntington area. And so our master plan has shown that we have set aside X amount of gallons and gallons of capacity for future use of already existing residential properties and residential neighborhoods.
got it.
And
Okay.
that's what your master plan should show.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
Hey, I actually have one more question, just about capacity. So when we look at the different sewer sheds, right? I'm not sure if you have table 1 available or if somebody there could pass it to you, but essentially we show the future flow allocation, the average daily flow, and then any remaining by every sewer shed. Some of our sewer shed or districts are over capacity, but our system has capacity. Are we allowed to restrict connection or larger developments in the sewer shed if they're already over capacity? So for instance, if zone 1 is over, so currently it shows over 3,300 gallons, right? Could we say, hey, our current capacity doesn't allow us to expand in that area?
Depends on whether that capacity jeopardizes other sections of your facility. And how you've laid out and identified that capacity, because one of the basic rules is if you have capacity, you have to provide it. That's why these differentiations are allowed with regard to how you charge, because some of those categories are gonna gobble up your capacity much quicker.
Okay, thank you.
John, Larry, have any questions?
You force an 830G project into one of these areas that the capacity is over what it should be. And it gets passed, does that become our problem?
If the 830G lands, you have to service it.
If the 830G is approved, we have to approve.
Correct. The law says that the Planning and Zoning Commission establishes the densities. So if that density is established, if you have capacity, you have to provide it.
So that's why it's important to have this discussion with zoning, because the master plan for the sewer shed areas was X, and now planning and zoning is changing that by allowing all of these apartment complexes on small pieces of property. It skews our data and consumes our capacity and creates a windfall for the property owner.
Well, it sounds like to me, they don't have any discretion either.
Well, they do have some discretion because they,
Traffic, safety,
well,
certainly
the-
not capacity.
a lot of these projects come in as PDDs. And when it's a PDD, the commission has a wide variety of discretion to impose different things as a condition of approval. But they haven't been doing that. And believe me, I've gone to them and I've told them. You know, this is a deviation from where we were the last 30 years. And okay, I understand that the things in society change and, you know, but we've got to be able to keep pace with it.
Yeah, but this 830G thing, from the way I understand it, you've got very limited reason to restrict these things.
You're doing that, there's no question that they're
At this
problematic.
table, at this board, at this
Yeah,
approval.
Even with the zone thing.
Well, even with the zone, right?
there's no question it's problematic for everyone, not just us.
So let me ask you a question. Does this board have parameters for approval, document? For instance, I've sat on a bunch of commissions, and the one in Fairfield that I sit on now has a 80% threshold. And if you want to put a new building in, or if Fairfield you wants to put a new dorm in, they have to, their engineers have to go out and they have to determine the capacity of the sewer line that they're connecting to. And if they exceed 80% of the capacity, they reject it. And they've prevailed doing that, but it's memorialized in a policy.
We don't have anything like that.
You need a policy. You need a policy that, or at least be on record as saying, this is the policy we're going to adhere to, 80% rule. If it exceeds 80%, and they have to go out and validate that. There are methods, to, employ that permit you to deny these applications, or, go ahead.
Those methods are based on engineering.
Yeah.
And capacities and policies that are across the board, which you're entitled to do. You just have to set up the paradigm.
Correct, we have to have a policy.
Across the state or just, it's by
No,
commit?
local.
Okay.
You have unique characteristics to your system. You have a split system. You have areas that are already over capacity. If your engineer can give you rationality as to why you have to differentiate based on flow, based on capacity, based on future problems that you may have, based on maintenance that's going to be generated, all those things go back to some kind of formula that you present to the public and say, if you're connecting to us, you have to do X, Y, and Z. If your flow goes over 80%, you're not coming in because it'll cause this kind of strain on our system. Our engineers have proven this.
Or you can employ fees.
Correct.
For instance, you come into Fairfield WPCA with a 30-unit request. If they approve that, the conditions are going to be that you pay what their you pay what the fee is for a one-bedroom house. It's $3,200. For a two-bedroom, it's $4,100. So for a 30-unit building, the developer is going to come and give you a check for $3, $4, $5, $600,000. And that goes into your INI account. Why? Because INI creates capacity. So what you're saying is, pay us to create capacity to accommodate your proposal, right? Beyond that, they have an 80% threshold. I don't care if you're, if you want to pay this or not. If you exceed that threshold, they deny you. You know, I'm not hearing any of this is in place here, and I think if you really want to attack this in 2024, the decision-making has to be based on some black letter policies that you need to adopt. That's what I think. That's how you, I don't want to say fight this, you don't want to fight development, but that's how you permit this panel and give it the teeth to make these things prudent.
And I think that's why, that's the very reason we're here today, having this discussion.
Okay.
And,
Good.
and look at, I live this all the time with all the boards and commissions, and, you know, they can't operate in a vacuum. There has to be a big picture that they see and be part of that big picture. And so, you know, I would suggest to the chairman that the minutes of this meeting today be forwarded to the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, so they can hear this discussion. And then we'll go there and ask them if they read these minutes. Because, as I said earlier, we've never been in this situation before. All the rules have changed. And okay, we have to change. We have to change the way we're doing
You
things.
have to adapt.
Right, we have to adapt. And I just don't want to see us get in a situation where we keep going down the road, and then all of a day, one of these days, the pipes are all full.
Yeah.
And then people get left behind, while other people we've created a windfall for. I mean, that's really what it boils down to.
Any further discussion by anybody?
Fran, I have a question. Out of the 6 items, when we make these proposals, what you're suggesting, am I correct, is we pick 2 of the 6 items or 3. That's
Use all of them. You could use all of them.
All
They're
of
just,
okay.
they're parameters that you are entitled to, as this gentleman said, establish your black letter policy with
Okay.
regard to.
So you can have one public hearing covering, let's say, more than one, is what I'm saying. If you
could have a
adopt
public
4.
hearing that says you're gonna have 10 different categories. You could have a public hearing that says you're gonna have 3 different uses. You can have a public hearing that explains everything in the way you're gonna charge.
Okay, thank you.
And along those lines, Pete, you know better than anybody with the FOG program, the impact that fats, greases, and oils have on our plant. And so Bill and I have had this discussion about all these apartment buildings that go in. There's no accommodations for grease traps. I mean, you take an acre and a half of land and put 60 units on it, you got 60 kitchens. It's almost, it may equal to that of a restaurant, a big sized restaurant. I don't know the answer to that, but that's something that our engineer, you know, we have to press our engineers on to give us answers to.
So how does this happen, Mayor? How do these policies get formulated?
I think the first thing that has to happen is our engineer has got to update our sewer shed areas, the different zones that we have in town. And we have to evaluate how much capacity already exists in each zone. And then, you know, one of the things that I think is easy enough to do is establish different sewer use rates for different types of applications, i.e. the high density projects as opposed to a single family residential home. You know, and start from there.
Okay, and who's going to do that work?
Well, our engineer is gonna help and our attorneys are gonna
Okay.
help establish that.
All right.
But, you know, the directive really has to come from the board. as to what your priorities are. And quite honestly, you know, with all the new people on our board, you know, there's a lot of history that needs to be, you need to get up to speed on, and see how things have evolved, and see what we already have in place.
So Eugene here, I think step, like you said, Mark, one of the first two steps is take these 6 different types of charges, right? You get 6 buckets, right, for all these 6 different types. And then we take all the different types of buildings that could exist in a town. High density apartment building belongs in this one of the 6. Fast food belongs in this one of the 6. And we just categorize any type of new development, because obviously out of these 6, one of them makes the most sense for fast food, who you don't have a lot of seats or a lot of bathrooms, but they're pumping out food all day. That may, in my opinion, most sense to use a meter, right, to see how much water's coming out, right? So each type of development obviously falls into one of these 6 a little more than another type of development, and I think that's fairly easy to go through and can get backed up by an engineer easily.
You know, the other thing that Bill and I talked about was flow meter in the pipe at the confluence of the building, you know, whether it's an office building, an apartment building. So we know, or we can gauge how much water or how much liquid is coming out of that building. And try to ascertain what
Or you
steps
could-
we should be taking.
You could do what everyone else does. And use usage as the basis of rates.
From water meters.
Yeah, everybody does that. Trumbull does it, Fairfield does it, Bridgeport does it, everybody uses the usage. And
Based on the water bill.
a water bill, and that's how they base their rates.
That's one of the ways you can do it. You can mix it up, though. You can have that for residential. And that's normally what happens with regard to residential. That's how your standard rate is established. But then for your higher volume users, you can impose meters. You could decide if we're getting X number of gallons into the system, there has to be a meter. And
Well,
you
look,
can
the
impose-
only time I've ever seen that is when we had a legal challenge in Bridgeport, where, you know where the ice house is on Cassuth Street there?
Yeah.
They were paying on the meter going in, making product, selling it, and they challenged it and they won.
Huh.
So there's exceptions. But, unless you're using, that is the fairest way to establish rates, in my opinion. You pay for what you use. To have a blended rate for everybody in town, I don't see that as being fair. And by the way, if you had a usage fee, you could change the fee for commercial, you could change the fees for industrial. You could change the fees for restaurants, you could have special fees for all of those categories. And that solves that problem. This is very, very unique. Not many places have a fixed fee for,
Well, we've never
usage.
been in this situation before.
I know, and I'm saying, we're talking about adapting. I think you look around, you see what other people are doing, Mayor, and that's how they're doing it. You're surrounded by people who do it a different way. That's why these big numbers are coming from Stratford, because they can't use your usage fees, but I do believe they use usage for their billing. So they just come up with a number, and that's what they're charging you. And by the way, your fees are lower than anybody in the region. They're
State.
in the state, they are. So I think you have room to change the method of billing, and to make it fair, and also to address the issue of super users. Cause you hit it on the head. 30 kitchens, has to be treated differently than 30 single-family homes, I think. It's an intense use.
Right, it's right, it's coming into the system at one point.
Right,
So it's easier to deal with it at one point than it is at 55 different locations.
right.
Well, I think you also make a point. I think we have to sit down and set up some up-to-date regulations. For example, grease trap, using that as an example. It seems to me like this stuff goes to zoning. Walk in here, the engineer says, yeah, it'll work, and that's the end of it. And that, that can't fly.
Well, we have our own consultants and all of these proposals, anything that this commission reviews has to be validated by our people. That's what happened. I think in tonight's meeting, there's an issue of a grease trap, right? That was revisited by Ty and Bond is that on the agenda this
No.
evening? No. It's not on the
It's been
agenda?
discussed.
Okay, so, but that should be the protocol. Somebody comes in, they bring their engineer gives you their, analysis. You have to have it validated by your own analysis. And it has to be, it's best to be a third party. It's better than the town engineer to have a third party do that. Because should there be a dispute, it's a third party who's giving you that advice, not your in-house person who could be perceived as biased.
Well, we never really asked our in-house to be too technical. The only thing that our engineers have done for years is verify that the presentation on the prints, do they work from an engineering standpoint?
Well, it's
We-
civil,
Yeah, we don't talk about impact capacity.
right? It's
We don't-
it's a separate discipline.
Right, it's a separate
Mayor.
discipline.
And who handles that? The same type of consultant or?
Boston O'Neill could do
That's
that,
what I'm saying, the same
but they
consultant.
should, you have to up that budget. Make sure you're getting third-party review of all the requests that you're getting in terms of capacity, usage, and the like. And you say you want your town engineer to collaborate with this commission to develop, these policies. That's a starting point, I think. I think you need more than that. I think you need a survey of what everyone in the area is doing so we can defend, whatever policy we end up with. I think we ought to review rates. I think you have to evaluate your system and the capital needs of the system. And, all that has to go into a hat. There's no fixed way to do this. There's no magic to it. All of those, components have to go into the hat and you have to come up with a rate that addresses everything. A rate that addresses everything we need for the prudent, operation of the system. And you have to have a policy that establishes, fees and, decision-making protocols for what's coming before this committee now. And I don't know how you get there. There's a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts, right?
And have to be done in parcels. John, are you familiar with, you said Trumbull, one of the issues that came here many times, I've been here since 2010, is charging water flow, but what do we do with the people on wells versus the people on city water?
Fixed rate.
Fixed rate.
Yeah.
So that's, okay, all right. Okay, because that's one of the issues with measuring water. when
Right, there's a
people-
fixed rate.
That's it, okay, all right. And I have a question.
Well, there's no question, there's a lot of moving parts, but you gotta start somewhere.
Yes.
You gotta understand what your capacity issues are or are not.
So where do you want to start? Sit down with the engineer and I mean, these are big changes for the town of Shell. They're big changes.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Um, I think I have one other thing I wanted to.
What, something else?
Oh, boy.
Don't get old, Mark.
Well, look, and I think some of this stuff has to be done in the form of a workshop. And maybe not the whole board, but, you know, committees of the board done to sit with the engineers during the day and take one segment and just look at it and evaluate it.
That's the way to do it. That's one way to do it, yeah. Did you bake?
He eats, he don't bake, he eats.
I stayed up all night. She actually, this young lady, you wanna move along, here, you only got a room till 5:30, so.
Huh?
I wanna move along, because you only.
What am I gonna do? Throw the mayor out? I'm
Yeah,
gonna throw him out?
Young lady, at the end of the day, will remind us, we only have this room
You're
until
all set?
5:30, and then planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning, yeah, I think you guys have.
Thank you very much.
Direction. I mean, once you've spoken with your engineers and you've got a consensus, if you want me to help you create the regulation, if you want me to help you get to the public hearing, you want me to help you with the notices, I can do that, but you have to create your paradigm.
I understand. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, are you finished?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, I'm sorry for the delay, but we'll get back to our agenda. The approval of minutes. Need a motion to approve the minutes of the August 22nd, 2024 special meeting on September 11th, 2024 regular meeting.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Marsilio. You have a second?
I second the motion to approve the minutes of the August 22nd, 2024 special meeting and the September 11th, 2024 regular meeting.
Seconded by Commissioner Pace. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposition, vote and so ordered. Thank you. Okay, down to communications, the budget worksheet, Bill, you want to
Everything's
discuss?
pretty much on schedule, except for a couple items. Basically, on the plant part. They're using a little bit more money than anything. That's
Thank
it.
you. Thanks, Bill.
Then I have one
Yes,
issue of communications for the board. I think we have found, we certainly identified a plant supervisor.
oh, you,
He was sent a letter of for employment. He has signed that letter. He is coming from Arizona. He is certified in Connecticut. He has done work in Connecticut, in Bridgeport, and Stamford, and New Haven. He used to work for a private company, and he's retired, and now he's coming out of retirement.
awesome.
So I got my fingers crossed that he's gonna show up here in Connecticut in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully it's gonna work out.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. Item 5, unfinished business. I need a motion to approve application VCC 2411 for 281 Canal Street, West Cedar Village at the Locks, based on the recommendations made by Fuss and O'Neill, specifically noting the conditions for pipe size and any future food establishment requirements. Do we have a motion for that?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Apologize. I make a motion to approve application BCC 24-11 for 281 Canal Street West, Cedar Village at the Locks, based on the recommendation made by Fuss and O'Neill, specifically noting the conditions for pipe size and any future food establishment requirements.
Thank you, Commissioner Duncan. Do we have a second?
I second the motion to approve application BCC 24-11 for 281 Canal Street West, Cedar Village at the Locks, based on the recommendations made by Fuss and O'Neill, specifically noting the conditions for pipe size and any future fast food established requirements. Excuse me, future food established requirements.
We have a second, any discussion, Mayor?
Yeah, what were specifically the recommendations from the engineer?
Do we have those, Bill, here?
Yeah.
Here's the engineer right here.
Yeah, please. go
Yeah,
ahead.
please.
And also, has anyone evaluated the pipe in the street? I know it's been replaced further south, but I'm not sure that it's been replaced that far north, and I don't know the answer to that.
Pipe in the street.
So our comments, I'm Walter Guy, Western O'Neill, our comments on Cedar Village at the locks, 281 Canal Street. Was as follows, that pursuant to the open gov message we received on 11/4 by Patrick Rose. There was a restaurant space originally indicated on the application. Was inadvertently indicated and is actually just a commercial retail space at this point. So our comment was that if in the future the commercial retail space is refurbished or food service establishment tenant signs a lease for the space, a new sewer connection application shall be submitted. The new application should be inclusive of proposed grease trap, sizing calculations, and a separate waste line for the kitchen waste. And then we revised the sewer application table that was with the application and recalculated the benefit use charges and EDUs associated with the flow changes.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that be incorporated in the approval conditions. Change of use should have a review of the grease trap requirements and the like. And it's on the record now, and I would recommend that we approve this application, incorporating those conditions for approval.
Well, what about the pipe in the street? Do we know the
Well-
status of that?
We,
Do we know?
Well, the last video we did of it, is reinforced
Thanks, John.
concrete pipe. Probably dating back to, I would say the 70s, okay, and,
How far though, Pete? Because
up to this location.
because when we redid Canal Street from inline plastics up, all that was replaced.
That's on the other side of the Canal Street, the side closest to Howe Avenue. It's all plastic, that's plastic pipe.
Right.
This
right.
one though is still RCP, all the way down on the side of, the Derby side of Canal Street. Okay, I mean, that's on our maps, that's in our videos, we have videos showing that.
so Mayor.
But
you're
it has to
talking-
cross over at some point then.
That's at the end, right where that,
Farmer's market.
farmer's market is, that's where they cross over.
So you have two issues. You're asking what the condition is. And then there's the issue of capacity.
In the pipe.
So,
Is that calculated by you guys?
We were comparing it to table one's flow allocation for sewer shed number 8 based on the updated non-industrial average daily flows that were calculated due to the change from the restaurant space to what was indicated as a retail/commercial space. And so the only other calculation we performed was verifying that the size of pipe coming out of the building based on all the flow that they're proposing to the connection in the street was sized appropriately. We didn't look any farther downstream.
Well, I don't know that if it's the existing pipe up that end, that it has enough capacity to deal with what's been approved up there, and there's 2 more projects coming through the mix. Upper Canal Street, over by where the locks are. So you should also know that we received a $2 million grant to upgrade the crossing and complete the road improvements on Worcester and Canal all the way up to their project. So, I think that at some point in time, if that pipe is that old and it should be replaced, that would be the time to do it. And we should know the answer to that. I can't remember, When Avalon went in, Pete, we reconstructed that road all the way up past Avalon. The sewer line had to be changed.
Oh,
We should know the answer to that.
Do you know the answer?
no, well, the video, I don't remember the exact date of the video. I thought it was around 2012, 13, something like that.
Well, the road was done after that.
Yeah.
So, I gotta believe that we changed the pipe.
Oh, if you can research it and look at the video again.
Well, I think should. You know, because you got two more bigger projects that are gonna be coming in on that road.
Any other discussion?
Oh, I do have another question. If the thing is changed to a restaurant, is there a footprint, someplace within the area to put an outside grease trap? Has there been an allocation for that?
There is a area, a curb or sidewalk, it's hard to tell exactly. On the side that the restaurant or retail space is indicated, I don't. I think it's in the plan.
That question, you guys want?
Just generally. Well.
So, my name is Manny Silva, civil engineer for Roski's Own Company, representing the applicant, 35 Redwood Avenue, Fairfield, Connecticut. There is a space up on the, third floor here that is never gonna be a restaurant. The application inadvertently we put in for a restaurant, but it's really just gonna be a retail space. If there were ever to be a restaurant, then we would have to put a grease trap here underneath this parking lot, but we don't anticipate ever having a retail or a restaurant user in that mixed use space. We have to provide a mixed use space because that's what zoning required. And it more likely than not will be a retail space of some sort. As far as the pipe, it terminates here, as you can see, and as staff has mentioned, the pipe has been TV'd. There's no issue with it structurally or for capacity. We are within the allotment. There's no excess. I mean, there's no issue with the watershed, the sewer shed here for capacity. So what we have is a small extension, as your engineer has reviewed, with a new manhole out in front of the property, and then a lateral that's connected. Pretty straight. Any questions?
I mean, you say you don't anticipate having a restaurant. Well, none of us are gonna be here in 20 years from now when they come in and ask for a restaurant.
Right, they can ask for a restaurant, but this board can either deny it, or we would have to make the accommodation for a new grease trap or anything of that nature. And again, it's up to this board, that future board, to make sure that it meets all the fog requirements, if they want to approve it, or they could just say no.
Yeah, so I'm big on the record showing that as part of the approval.
And I think it was done correctly where they made a motion, you incorporating the comments from your engineer. And I think that's the correct path.
We also wanted to add what Commissioner Marsilio said about, we have that on the minutes as well.
Condition of approval ought to incorporate the recommendations of the engineer.
Yeah, that's right, sir.
Right.
Okay, any other discussion? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? Vote and so ordered. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item C, 5C, BCC -24-12, 301 Bridgeport Avenue.
Chairman Ramia,
I'm sorry?
sorry, I have to go. I have another obligation to go to. It's 5:30.
Okay,
I apologize.
You have a form?
could you wait 2 minutes?
Sure.
At this point, I need a motion to approve application BCC -24-12 for 301 Bridgeport Avenue. based on the recommendations made by our consultant Fuss and O'Neill.
I make a motion to approve application BCC 2412 for 301 Bridgeport Avenue based on the recommendations made by Fuss and O'Neill.
Thank you, Commissioner Pace. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Marsilio.
Repeat the whole thing.
Repeat the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what Tadosio said.
No, we don't do that. We never do that, in any board.
I
Okay, we have,
second the motion.
we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
What were the recommendations by the engineer?
The-
The routine?
Yeah, routine from Fuss and O'Neill.
I can speak to them if you'd like.
Sure.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mike. You're all set.
Thank you, guys.
So the recommendations were, is there was a
What's that?
detail provided for the.
Yeah, he's
connection
leaving.
to the
We'll do that
existing
next
sewer
time.
main. It indicated PVC gravity sewer lateral. But it mentions Schedule 40. Schedule 40 is not permitted for the sewer ordinances. And we wanted them to just confirm that the material would be STR 35 balanced spigot pipe to the.
What's the difference?
Okay.
So Schedule 40 is your typical, you go to.
The green
home
pipe, right?
improvement Center and it's or the primer and then the glue for the connections, big Schedule 40. That's what you can get out here for home improvement center. And then STR 35 is the green pipe with the gasketed.
Okay.
And then it's a balanced spigot.
Yes, a table.
And then the one other
Oh,
comment
sorry?
was.
Yeah. You have the table or just not down to it?
Didn't provide
Just request table. I can table it myself, huh?
of that pipe. So our comment was to please
I'll
provide
do that
clarification on the size of the existing statements.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, guys, with conditions like these. I'm sorry to interrupt,
Hold
I
on a second.
apologize.
Go ahead, Eugene.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
question for when we send comments like these on an approval, does the board ever request like record sets of documents to confirm that these amendments were made in the design? I feel like, we've seen these a lot in the past and then, like number 2 looks pretty serious. What if the size of that, it could be nothing, but is there any provisions for, us to create like a step to follow up on?
Like an as-built drawing, you mean? Something
Yeah, or like
that?
like a record, as-built is after it's built, but they need to file within X amount of days of this approval prior to starting construction. Not to complicate it, but some of these, what happens
That's
if that pipe at Sunwood Drive isn't the size that we expected?
No, I thought it was followed up by our office, but I'm told it's not.
We do request as-built when the project's done. That's a different, like Mr. Pace said, that's a different. So,
Got it.
circumstance.
So does somebody review that, match the as-built drawing to the proposed plan?
Bill would be the.
No.
Not yet, not yet. no.
But you inspect the.
Yeah.
The connection. And you know what the recommendation of the engineer is.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, that's what I meant, well, we do follow up. on it.
I can't tell you on that, when you said the as-built.
Oh, no, I know that.
What he's requesting is, like, any of these recommendations are made here.
You all set, Eugene?
Before.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, at this point, because we lost one of the commissioners, I'm gonna table 6A, 6D, and 6E to our next meeting. That's about the number, we're changing our meeting night to Tuesday, and it gives you the dates, but the rest of it is all, we can just wait for that. Capacity information, Bill, do you want to address that, or
That's exactly what we talked about before, with,
with Attorney Toyosha?
yeah, for
Okay.
the sewer sheds and that.
Bridgeport Avenue, Long Hill Crossroads, 6C, relocate the sewer main. Who's dealing with that?
Dominic Thomas.
Is he here?
No, it's me, sorry. Sorry you get to hear me again. My record, I think, is 6 in one night. Good evening again, Manny Silva from Rose Tizo, representing the applicant. So the history of this project is that there is an existing, sewer line. This comes from the pump station over at Beardsley Mill. And that gets pumped up to the top of here of the Wells property, near, at the top of this hill here, and then it runs down by gravity, across Long Hill Crossroads, and then down to the other pump station that's in front of, it's called.
Japanese
The
restaurant?
Japanese restaurant.
Wild Ganges.
Yep. I always remember it as Madison's for whatever reason. But so what we'd like to do is, we want to do a commercial development here on this property. And to do so, we have to relocate the existing gravity line, that kind of traverses the property on a diagonal. And then bring it uphill more, so to avoid the developable area. And we do that, we actually attained, a way of doing it that we shorten up the run. So we increase the pitch by a little bit, and the existing, pipe there is a 21-inch RCP, and we want to upgrade it to a 24-inch RCP or whatever size, you guys feel is appropriate for future, future use. We thought that the 24-inch would be more than enough, especially at the pitch that it's going at, which is, around, in this case, around, a little over 0.5%, 0.6. It ranges from 0.6 all the way up to, it's about 0.6, so I made it all even. Your existing pipe kind of, it's a little steep, goes up and down in pitch, due to the fact that I was kind of trying to follow contours a little bit there and not make the pipe very deep. Whereas we kind of, what I did is I took the two inverts at either end and I established one pitch throughout the whole length. And that should help your, flow within the pipe itself. What you see here is the profile of the new pipe that's being laid. And you can see, what the grade is right now, at the site. And, I don't know, that's basically it. And if you have any questions, I also have some details, your standard, details of, that for manholes and, the spigot ends, and how the pipes connect. And then your standard cut and cover, details.
So Manny, you said that the pipe, its point of origin is at the Beard Sawmill pump station?
No, the force main comes from the Beersall Mills pump station, goes up, Hawks Ridge, I'd say, where the high point is there near Hawks Ridge.
Yeah.
And then it goes from there, it goes from the gravity line across, from Hawks Ridge, across Longville Crossroads, across this property, right through the middle of it. And then it ends up right in front of, kind of does a zigzag, and ends up in front of the Japanese restaurant and then into that pump station there. From there, it gets pumped up Bridgeport Avenue to over the crest, and then from there, it's gravity also, all the way down to downtown.
How does that impact or not impact our pumping system?
The pumping system, how it should or should not. What it does is it gives you extra capacity in that gravity line if you wanted to upgrade your pumps later on. So if you wanted to upgrade the pumping system to increase your capacity of that pump station at Beardsaw Mill, you have now a larger receiving pipe that's straighter. It doesn't negatively impact any of the pumps, the one before or after it. If anything, it just increases the capacity of the pipe in between.
Well, I mean, you were gonna increase the capacity because of the development. I mean, there's gotta be some impact on the pump station, no?
Our development itself, that's a whole different, so the development itself will have a discharge onto Bridgeport Avenue, and then it'll go down Bridgeport Avenue.
So it'll be gravity all the way to the pump station or all the way
Yeah.
down Bridgeport Avenue?
Correct. Until it hits Beardsaw Mill and it gets pumped. So it's gonna go down Bridgeport Avenue, get to the pump station, come back up here, and then back around.
So the relocation of the line is not doesn't create capacity, it just
We're not
relocates
connecting
it.
into, we're not adding any flow to the line itself, no. So it's just, we're just we're just asking permission to relocate it. That's on this private property,
Right.
there's an easement.
Right,
We just want to relocate it so that it gets further away from the developable area along Bridgeport Avenue. Our intent is to develop along Bridgeport Avenue, not up, Long Hill Crossroads or anything like that. So we don't mind having an easement on this area on the high side that we won't be proposing any longer.
Is this still going back down to Third Sawmill and then back up to the Bridgeport Avenue?
So this, I want to separate the two things. One will come in, once we get a zoning approval for this part, for
Okay.
this commercial development, we'll come back for a usage approval on that, this is not what we're here for tonight. But yes, that usage, right, will go down Bridgeport Avenue to Beard Sawmill, get pumped up to the hill here, and then come down Gravity on the high side of our property, back to the pump station in front of Pokey Motors. Is it Pokey Motors? No.
No, it's Wild Angie.
I mean,
Do you understand what he's trying to do? Well, can you leave that with us so we can, because we can't vote on it tonight anyway, we have no quorum.
right, we just want to be able to, I'm sure you're gonna have to refer this to your engineer also, so they can have comment.
Okay,
We just wanted to present in front of you so that it can move forward with, hopefully we can relocate this line on a private property. And try to give it some improvements so it's future proof also.
So what were the changes to the pitch again? Compared to what it is
I
now?
think the flattest it got was, I think, 1/3%, and then it was a little bit steeper in some sections, just under 1%, so we just took whatever the two ends and we made it one pitch across the whole one.
Have you investigated the impact on the receiving station as far as the motors in there and the wet wells?
It shouldn't have any issue because, like I said, you have this existing zigzag in it here, right? That
Yeah.
we're still gonna have to come into, and that's gonna be the existing line that comes from here.
Yeah, it runs along the side of the building
Yeah,
and then it goes out in the front to the pump station.
correct. So that's still gonna be there. That's gonna still be there. That's gonna stay the same.
Well, yeah, we've increased that because of the development up on top of the hill. Goes
Right,
into that
and I
also.
think this is gonna be, is a continuation of an upgrade of that line,
Okay,
And I think that's a good stewardship with the town. I think the town has always been good about having some of the developers help with the infrastructure upgrades and things of that nature. And we're just trying to continue that.
any other questions about it anyway, concerns? Thank you.
All right, have a good evening. Off to Glastonbury. Thanks.
60,
You can't do it, you can't vote, don't matter,
question on you?
doesn't matter, we could just.
We can
if you
just pay
approve
it,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's fine,
Well, I'll deal with that.
Yeah.
And our financial statement, is there anything on the financial statement?
nothing, waiting for the order.
Okay, with nothing else, looking for an adjournment, a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Masilio, motion, second,
I second it.
Commissioner Pace, all in favor, aye, opposed. Thank you very much.